what you're talking about is forgiveness. You need to be able to forgive yourself for not being perfect. You need to be able to realize there will be bumps and grinds, and you will fall down, and you will get gravel in your knees, and it will hurt, and you will not want to get up. Okay? I will just tell you that right now. What I do to stay sane is I take a mark, I really do this, and I draw a little heart in the center of the palm of my hand. And any time in the future that I get depressed and I go to do it, it's too hard, blah, 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 what if they don't like what I'm doing? I just remind myself, wait a minute. I'm not perfect. I don't have to be. The universe isn't perfect. This is funny. We're dead forever. We're only here for a very short amount of time. If yoga teaches us anything, it's to be here now.
Hello, Dr. Clifford. How are you doing?
Hello. Very, very well indeed, Nikisha. It's lovely to see you.
It's great to see you, and it's great to have you on the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great. So exciting.
And we are so fortunate to have someone explain a very different domain to the listeners. We've had people from CSR, from the social venture, from corporate, but not someone who's into science.
Okay. All right. Well, I won't disappoint you. Please lead us.
So just before starting, before we hop on to the actual conversation, I would like you to explain to the listeners what neuroplasticity is, because some of them might be completely new to the topic.
Okay. All right. That's an excellent question. What is neuroplasticity? I'm going to start off by saying the word neuroplasticity is new, but the concept of neuroplasticity is very old. In fact, the yogis from 5,000 years ago knew that the brain, that the system that we live inside of is plastic. But unfortunately, because it was, I'm going to be crude and rude here, because it is an Eastern idea, I think we in the West lost track of that, and lost track of the fact that information and those ideas are very, very real and have been around for a long time. But in a nutshell, neuroplasticity says we are not stuck, that the material that we live inside of has plastic and learning abilities. And so many people get stuck, say they become anxious, they become depressed, or they convince themselves they can or cannot do something. That's a neuroplastic property that you can then begin to modify. So the big idea of neuroplasticity is we're not stuck. And the study of neuroplasticity is the study of the application of that idea in lots and lots of different ways to improve our enjoyment of life. Is that clear enough?
Yes, sir, it is. Okay. So just before starting, I have another question that just popped up in my mind.
Perfect.
So how does neuroplasticity controls our mind, and how can we develop on that? Like, how can we use that to calm us down, and how does that work for us?
All right. Okay. Then that's going to be really what I talk about. So how about we jump right into the agenda?
Right, sir.
And just to orient the listener or the viewer, then what I'll do is just my little agenda is I'm going to talk a little bit about me, how I got to be here talking with you. The path that I've taken has involved Raja and Pranayama Yoga. I'll talk a little bit about that. And then I'm going to introduce an important neuroplastic idea that we can talk to our brains and how that changes a lot of the relationship we have with ourselves. I can talk a little bit more about neuroplasticity in terms of, are there tools available that we can use nowadays to help us function better? And I'll show you a couple of those. And then take you into the point, well, you mentioned, India's having a pretty tough lockdown, and a lot of people have got a lot of energy, but they don't know what to do with it.
Right.
And so I'll talk about some of the techniques I get my clients to do to take care of that sort of excess energy and kind of too much adrenaline. So how's that for an agenda?
Yes, sir, that sounds perfect. And I would absolutely like you to address, as you said, India having a really strict and tough lockdown. Even I've been receiving a lot of calls from friends and relatives talking about how they do not know what to do with the pent-up energy they have, how to streamline
Right.
that.
Yep. 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 Absolutely. I'll get to that. I have a lot of ideas for you. I'll get to that, I promise. So you can probably, I was born in 1949, and you can probably hear the English accent,
Right.
although it's not as plummy as it could be. Right? And I've always been a show-off. You'll notice that I'm funny and I'm animated, and I like to. So basically, I was meant to be an actor. That was what God put me here, was to be an actor. But since God has a sense of humor, I was born with a horrendous case of eczema, atopic dermatitis, 65% covered. And so I was allergic to all of the stage makeup and everything, so I couldn't go that route, but I kept being funny. I couldn't, so because I couldn't go into theatre, I did something very unusual. I went into engineering, into electrical engineering. So my undergraduate is in electrical fields, how electricity moves within the brain. But when I came out from my engineering degree, although I was good at it, I got a first, I didn't love it. And I was lucky to be able to move into psychology, applied psychology, the study of how electricity physically moves within the brain itself and how humans orient and make sense of their world. Coming off my master's, I realized that I got a number of the pieces. The engineering deals with hard things. Psychology deals with soft things. But I wanted a way of combining the two together, so my doctorate's in cybernetics. And if you're a bit rusty about it, cybernetics is the study of large, messy, probabilistic, goal-oriented systems like our brain. So that's the formal education piece of my life. But let's go back to the eczema. Around the age of, well, as a kid, like growing up in Britain in the early 50s, whenever I was taken to a doctor, what would generally happen is the doctor would say something like this: "Oh, we're so terribly sorry about Clifford's skin. I mean, it's awful, really. But you see, it's genetic, and genetic means he's got it for the rest of his life." Well, you've got it for the rest of your life, and it's genetic, right? That's pretty powerful hypnosis. It'll drive you crazy. And when you hit puberty and you're in love with Valerie and Yvonne, and you're wondering why you can never take them out for tea or coffee, it's because you're covered in this horrible, horrible mess. At the age of 19, my best friend said, "I think you need to come with me down to London." I was living in Stevenage. "Come to London and meet my friend who teaches yoga." Right? Teaches yoga. So I met my first yoga teacher down in London at the age of 19, and Keith Apone, is still alive today, taught me a simple pranayama exercise. Right? Just some breathing exercises just to see if I could calm myself down. And so I pursued the Raja Yoga route for quite some time, and I noticed I got a bit better, but not completely. In other words, it helped. From there, I met a fellow called Dave Dobson, who is a D-hypnotist. A D-hypnotist. And I would ask him, "Dave, why do you call yourself a D-hypnotist?" And he was American, a very, very deep, gravelly voice, and sounded like chocolate. And he would say to me things like, "Well, Clifford, it seems to me you've already done a wonderful job of hypnotizing yourself into what it is you believe. Perhaps you want to de-hypnotize yourself." And so he taught me many techniques to break up this terror and belief that I was truly stuck. Are you with me? That gave me another lift. About 9 years ago, I had a young man referred to me. So I work with people all over the world, right? Like this, talking to them, giving them ideas, giving them some techniques. I met a young man who was very, very severely clinically depressed. And I discovered, with his help, that you can actually use some simple things like a regular 9-volt battery and appropriate electronics to completely change your brain state, your mind state, and make the yoga exercises that I learned right at the beginning, the pranayama, much more effective. So that's the history of how I got here. Now what I do is I teach people these tools and techniques for getting on much better with their brain. So my path really starts with Raja Yoga and Pranayama Yoga. That's where my path started from. And I really mean it. When you get into it, you realize just how ancient these studies are, and that they need to be revamped. They need to be taken out of the closet and perhaps added with some of these tools to now make a huge impact again. But sometimes people ask me, how do I train my brain? Right? How do I train my brain to be this or that or another thing? And in that formulation of the question is the problem. Okay? When we say we're going to train our brain, it implies that our brain isn't listening to this. It implies that the brain is not part of our process of experience. This program, I was fully equipped to be able to put on EEG electroencephalogram headsets. And my job as a young ex-student was to glue an electrode onto the top of an RAF fighter pilot's head to be able to measure the electricity. Because we wanted to see if we could fire a missile using the brain alone. Right? Not a particularly glorious use of a brain-computer interface, but that's it. What we discovered is the brain creates the signal to fire the trigger 250 milliseconds before the operator becomes aware they're going to fire the trigger. 250 milliseconds before the event, your brain has already made the decision to do something. So in a very real way, ordinary free will is an illusion because we're being run by these patterns that are working. So rather than say, how do I train my brain, perhaps a more appropriate formulation would be, how can I get round the same side of the table as my brain? How can my brain and I really communicate with each other? So do you think your viewers and listeners would like a very powerful way of talking to their brain? Do you think they would like that?
Yes, definitely that would help, and especially for someone who's new and already battling with such phenomena, such stuff in their life, it would help.
Okay, perfect. Then the first thing to realize is that you want to do it. And that seems a funny thing to do, but you want it to occur to you, I'd like to talk to my brain. I'd like to try out some of these ideas. Okay? So the first thing you next want to do is, you can be standing, you can be sitting, you can be lying down. It doesn't make any difference. Okay? But what you want to do is you want to take a very deep breath. Here we go. And hold it just for a moment. And then let it out all the way. All the way. And you will find at the end of a very deep breath, there is a thing called a relaxation reflex. Your body will relax a little. You're going to take another deep breath. Hold it just for a moment. Let it out really, really slowly. All the way down. All the way down. Feel that relaxation reflex. Now you're down in the little step. Another deep breath. Hold it just for a moment. Let it down. All the way out. All the way out. All the way out. And when you notice that last relaxation reflex, if you haven't already closed your eyes, please close them. And with your eyelids closed, just roll your eyes up to the top of your head like you're looking at the ceiling. And when you feel like a little bit of eye strain, relax your eyes and keep your eyes closed. And now you can say to your brain, hello brain, what's your name? And you can just be there with yourself for a couple of minutes. You may or may not hear a name. It's not important. What's important is from this point forward, you can always take those 3 deep breaths, close your eyes, roll your eyes up and relax. And that signal is so unique, it must mean you want to talk to your brain, to yourself. And then when you're ready, you can come back. Now, when you combine pranayama and Raja Yoga exercises with a certain knowledge that you are living inside your brain, suddenly you now have a cybernetic loop. Now it's not how do I train my brain out there, it's how do we function better.
Right.
That make sense?
Yes. There's some very instantly relaxing thing attached to the breathing exercise or pranayams I just did with you. Though it wasn't very long, it was just a couple of breathe in and breathe out exercises we did.
Yes, yes. It's remarkable, isn't it? It's remarkable. And when you combine that with the idea that we are living inside I like to say a 3-pounder liver. It's like people are, oh, it's the brain. Oh, it's, it's as if it's not me. It's like, it's your brain. You're an expression of your brain. And so it makes perfect sense to get on well with it, to ask it questions. One of the best ways of getting your brain to answer questions and to reprogram itself is to ask it at night. Write a few notes to yourself of something that you'd like to achieve. Take that piece of paper with you to bed, read it over, and as you fall asleep, remember to do the eye roll. And I guarantee you, during your REM sleep and during your stage 4 restorative sleep, your brain will begin to organize it. Be on the lookout in the morning as you come back through hypnagogia to see what the answer might be. And if you miss it, you'll probably catch it when you're doing the washing up. If you want to get insights from the brain, one of the ways to do it is to make your hands busy. Why? We don't know. We don't know why that is, but if you engage in a motor task, in other words, a task involved with the hands, it somehow or other gives that brain an instant to be able to go, here, this is the answer. Because when you and I were talking at the start, the answer is to be able to open doors in our perception. Too often, people feel themselves trapped in a room with no doors or windows that they can't get out of. But it's an illusion. It's a self-repeating illusion. Their brains haven't been offered the idea that they're not stuck before. But as soon as the brain realizes, wait a minute, it might be how we're automatically processing, all of a sudden you can go, wait a minute, I could do this, I could do that, I could breathe. There's lots of things that I can do. One of the things I have noticed over the years is there are ways of accelerating even this eye roll technique. And I mentioned it a bit earlier that I discovered like 9 years ago that this whole field of brain tuners has been around for some time now. The idea of using a brain tuner to communicate with your brain has been around for about 100 years. So what I've got here is a simple device. It's a frequency generator in engineering terms. And if you're very upset, you're very anxious, you're depressed, you're miserable, you're just like out of sorts, or you're tired, these are electrodes that I've just put on. And you could select a particular frequency that, let's say, without you having to do anything, calms your brain down, so that your brain by itself just calms itself down and you're alert. Perhaps you've got too much work to do. You're very stressed. You've got a lot of work you've got to get done. You don't feel like doing it. You could use a different frequency to kind of gin your brain up so that it's running a little faster. So I have found, another one just popped in, is creativity. Sometimes people kind of almost have to be able to come up with something creative.
Right.
And there's creativity. That creativity is in that hypnagogia I mentioned as you go into and fall out of sleep. Well, there's a frequency you can dial up for theta for that hypnagogic state. So when you begin to realize that you can take all of the learning from Raja Yoga, begin to add it with the idea of neuroplasticity, you can now begin to say, are there other tools that I can use to improve how I function? And the answer is yes, there are. In addition to that, what I've discovered is there is a whole field of what you might call stimulation technologies that may use electricity, or they may use light to stimulate the body to create healthier cells, create a healthier microbiome, and healthier connections within the brain itself. So we've really come full circle. What started out as yoga, Raja Yoga, when I was 19, has led to a whole bunch of tools and techniques and ways of thinking that brings me back to this idea of empowering oneself, which is really what yoga is all about. Yoga is about empowering yourself and sculpting yourself, if you like. Now, a lot of people ask me, well, what do I do with all the energy? And a lot of people in the lockdown, extremely anxious. They're very, they're like tight. And I've got a number of ideas for them. The first thing I'd like you to do when you start to feel anxious, probably do this first thing in the morning, is find your favorite Bollywood dance scene. Okay? Nikisha, what is your favorite Bollywood dance scene ever? What's your favorite one?
Well, I would say there's this song. There's this song Ghungru which I dance to every morning.
Okay, let me hear it. Let me hear just a little bit so that the viewers know what you're talking about.
Okay, so Ke ghungaru toot gaye, ke ghungaru toot gaye. So that's how it goes.
Okay, perfect. All right. So you see how you're smiling? You
Right.
see how you immediately got into it? You are releasing neurotransmitters that are happy. As soon as your brain feels happy and those chemicals go through your brain, it's going to make you smile. When you smile, it's going to make you more cheerful, which will create more brain chemicals. So one of the quick things to do is to sing and have a little dance in the morning, your favorite Bollywood. If I was in Arabia, right? Yeah, that's the first thing. The second thing I would do is check out Professor Amy Cuddy, and I'll send you the link. Amy Cuddy is a professor of neuroscience at Harvard, and she has discovered if you stand with your chin up, arms akimbo, feet, legs apart, keep your chin up, and just set a timer for 120 seconds, this posture will create serotonin, and there's another word that I want. It's not endorphins. There's a neurotransmitter that will help you feel very confident and very strong and very large. So 120 seconds simply standing in that posture also is a wonderful tonic for the day. So those two things: sing, dance, and use the Amy Cuddy posture. That's that little piece of it. It doesn't answer the question with what do we do with all the time we've got. What do we do? We feel that we're kind of stuck. And this leads me to probably the most important idea of all that we've talked about, the idea of the non-negotiable goal. A non-negotiable goal. Now, a non-negotiable goal, when you first hear it, is kind of an odd kind of phrase, non-negotiable goal. What does it mean? It originally was noted in World War I when some soldiers out on the battlefield, having got disemboweled with a piece of shrapnel, which didn't kill them, were able somehow to pick themselves up literally and walk a mile and a half to the medic's tent before fainting and getting help. And when those men were interviewed later, how did you do that? Why didn't you do, how did you do this? I don't know, I just did. I knew I couldn't stop. I knew it was non-negotiable, and I just made my way there. When you watch the Tom Hanks film, Apollo 13, and there's a problem with the spaceship, Houston, we have a problem. You'll remember on the ground in Houston, the program manager said, we are not losing these 3 astronauts. This is non-negotiable. And so it sets up a mindset of, I am absolutely, definitely going to do it.
Right.
I'd like you to imagine a boy who has a beautiful girlfriend, but he's forgotten his anniversary to her. And he doesn't have a card and he doesn't have a gift. Can you imagine that that's a non-negotiable goal for that young man to get that sorted out really quickly? Non-negotiable goals. So when I work with people and I teach them these methods, I always ask them to think about a goal that they could achieve that would probably take between 10 and 12 weeks to achieve, about a quarter of a year, a chunk of time, but not too much, but not meaningless, that if it was achieved, your life would be a whole lot better. And I'll give you a specific example. One lady that I'm working with has set her non-negotiable goal to get her project management license. Right? And when we started, she set herself this, and then we worked through, and then as we were ending, sure enough, she got her license. So it's not a vast topic, but something that is meaningful. And what I would suggest your viewers do is take that piece of paper. Use the things that I've talked about today, the eye roll technique, talking to your brain. Your brain is part of the loop, realizing that we're not stuck. And begin to ask, well, I wonder what a useful non-negotiable goal for me might be. And then sleep on it. And I guarantee you, your brain will begin to wonder about this, because I'm guessing it's important not to be driven mad with the adrenaline that necessarily tends to get secreted when we get scared, when we get an environment like we are at the moment. So ask me a question, Rakisha. Ask me a question.
Yes, the question that first pops up in my mind is, after listening to all the techniques and the devices that you showed me, so how are these techniques different from psychologically training the brain?
Okay, that's a good question. It is in the orientation to the topic that is the answer. If you think about the word training, your brain will tend to go to the part of you where you train a dog. Training implies you are doing something to that creature.
Right.
Training, right? I don't look at it that way. I say the first thing you want to do is say, how do I get on around the same side of the table as my brain? And from that point together, grow new behaviors. Do you see that it's an important but subtle difference? You are getting on the, you are sort of allowing your brain to express itself much more fully from an inside out perspective rather than outside in. I'm going to train you now to be calm, and the beatings will continue until your mood improves. I don't think it works. It's not effective.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Ask me another.
So my another question was that, for example, we've known yoga since long. Yoga
Yes.
and the pranayams, that is the breathing exercises,
Yes.
and the asanas, the
Yes.
body postures, aren't
Yes.
new to us. Even these things not being new to us, I would tell you something. I would like state a fact over here that India has the most number of depressed people. So that is quite shocking to me.
Yes, me too.
So why is that? How are these exercises and these techniques that you told us would help us in the long run?
Okay. Would it be all right if I chastised you?
Yes, sir, definitely.
All right. You have allowed yourself to be hypnotized by people who have taken away your power. If you go back to your yoga and your meditations and your pranayams, and you engage in them again from the perspective of the development of yourself, you'll find they work. What has happened is, I think people have, it's almost like, it does require work, right? You do have to do some work. Right? You have to put some effort in. It's not going to happen automatically. It's like if you go skiing. I don't know if you've ever gone skiing. Sometimes I go skiing, and you'll find there are ruts in the slope. Well, if you're not careful, they can be a neuroplastic rut that the energy always goes down. You never question it. It's essential for you to question the situation you find yourself in, because I'm telling you, neuroplastically, you are not stuck. Now, you may have to do some work to figure out the tools you need to get the lifts that I talked about. And it's disappointing to me that India has lost sight of the fact it already has the tools. Right? You already have the tools.
Right.
Use them.
So, sir, like for example, as you gave the skiing example, there are a lot of rocks and bumps in the way.
Yes,
So,
there are.
so there's this perception I have, or talking or and conversating with my brain that I'll be able to do it. But somewhere at the back of my head, I have this question: what if I fall? What if I injure?
Yes,
So,
yes.
how do we overcome that fear, the fear of the uncertain, and how do we overcome that uncertainty and the all and overcome the anxiousness?
All right. Okay. That is such a good question. That is such a good question. All right, I'll show you what I do every morning. Okay, I've never done this before, certainly not on. What I do, I haven't done it this morning, but I'll do it almost every morning. What you're talking about is forgiveness. You need to be able to forgive yourself for not being perfect. You need to be able to realize there will be bumps and grinds, and you will fall down, and you will get gravel in your knees, and it will hurt, and you will not want to get up. Okay? I will just tell you that right now. What I do to stay sane is I take a mark, I really do this, and I draw a little heart in the center of the palm of my hand. And any time in the future that I get depressed and I'm going to do it, it's too hard, blah, 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 what if they don't like what I'm doing? I just remind myself, wait a minute. I'm not perfect. I don't have to be. The universe isn't perfect. This is funny. We're dead forever. We're only here for a very short amount of time. If yoga teaches us anything, it's to be here now.
Right.
Remember, get out of your trance. Goodness me, look how beautiful this world is. Look how gorgeous that red pen. I mean, that's amazing. The world is amazing. If we find the world is not amazing, it's because we've allowed ourselves to be hypnotized into the idea that we're stuck.
Mm-hmm.
It's all right. Stick a heart in your hand. Remind yourself, oh, wait a minute, I am not stuck. It might not be perfect, but I can begin to steer myself out. I take responsibility for it and I steer myself out.
Okay.
You're not don't be passive. You're not a victim.
Mm-hmm.
Don't allow yourself to be hypnotized, the idea you're a victim. You're not. You're a heroine, right? You're a hero. And that mindset always gets you out.
Right. So what I infer from this is like each one of us have that fear of falling down and not being able to accomplish. But the important thing is not letting it overcome your goals and overcome your dreams.
No, no,
Right.
no, no. In high tech, I used to work in the high tech world, right? In the high tech world, we say fail fast, fail often, and fail cheap.
Right.
Fail? Yeah. Fail fast, fail often, fail cheap. Why? Because a failure implies a boundary condition that you are unaware of. So it says there is powerful knowledge in falling down because it says don't do it that way again. So if you're not going to do it that way again, you can do it these ways.
Right.
Fail fast, fail often, fail cheap. And you're quite right. It's a mindset of, yeah, that really hurt. Oh, I don't know if I ever could. Oh, wait, what's this on my hand? Oh, yeah. Come on, let's get up and get going.
Right. So accept that failure is an inevitable part of life.
Yes, absolutely, it is. When you think about it, the child who has to learn to tie his shoelaces at the age of 3, inevitably, when he starts, makes terrible mistakes of where the loops go. But his brain remembers the successful turns and the unsuccessful turns, and the day comes where that little 3-year-old boy ties a perfect bow. How is that possible since it was failure before? Because there was learning in each of the iterations.
Beautiful, sir. It's lovely how these small changes and these small techniques or exercises can totally transform a brain, totally rewire it, and
Totally,
yeah.
totally, absolutely totally. I have a gift for your viewers and your listeners if they like. I know this is a ratty brain cat, but it's been all the way around the world, South Africa, Singapore, Australia, and so on. And it's a handy way for us to remind ourselves of what are the main lobes of the brain, how does it put together. A wonderful teacher in the United States, a high school teacher, has made her map available, and if anyone would like it, get them to send me a note or whatever. I'll send you the link so that they can make their own brain cap and get friends with their own brain. How would you like that?
Right. And also for the listeners who will be interested in availing this amazing
Oh, yes.
brain cap, I'll just
Yeah.
link down the
Oh, perfect.
yeah
I'll
to the
send it.
description. Right. Yes, please.
Okay.
So before
Any last thoughts? Any
yes,
last thoughts?
definitely. I would. These are the standard questions that I ask to every guest before wrapping up the podcast,
Of
which is
course.
the best advice you've received in your professional or personal life that you would sum up into a 5 to 7 word presentation title.
The best or most meaningful piece of advice that I ever got. Remember to breathe. Because you may find you've stopped breathing, you've held your breath because you're frightened, and that is affecting your physiology. So it's a non-verbal instruction, it's a non-verbal piece of advice that my teachers would always model for me. When they saw that I was stuck and I was frightened, they'd just breathe.
It's lovely how the small technique can throughout, go with you throughout your life and help you in very small yet meaningful ways.
Oh, yes. If you think about a train going down a railroad track, the points, the railroad track are quite small, but it makes a big difference whether it goes this way or this way.
Right.
So a breath is like these points. Do you just want to go on automatic, terrified in a machine? Or do you want to put a pause in there and then choose a different route?
Another question that I would like to ask you is, what would be your advice to the aspiring change makers or the aspiring leaders?
Humility. A lot of people like to think that they know the mechanisms of action of how things work. And now, I will go head to head with any scientist you want to talk to. Because when you push, you'll often find that the mechanisms of action that people believe are at work are actually a cartoon sketch. So don't get trapped into cartoon sketches and just explore as much as you possibly can. I think that would be my thought.
Right. Thank you, sir, so much. Thank you so much for the lovely insights. And this is something I would like to try in the near future. In fact, I would start implementing them from right now we end the call. And this is very beautiful small techniques and the beauty of how you can talk to your brain and how can communicate you into leading a better life.
Yes, absolutely. You're going to be surprised. You're going to be amazed. You're going to be like, I had no idea. And by the way, I want to thank you, Mishika, for your lovely presentation. I love how you're doing it. And please thank Amit for me for making this happen. And I'd like to thank Alex Lowe in Singapore for actually making the whole thing happen in the first place.
Right.
So thank you for everybody, right?
Right. So also something I want to say is whether or not you became an actor, like what you wanted to be a theater star, but you still please us with all the charm and the acting skills you put out.
Yes, thank you. You know, my father said to me, Clifford, you're good at it. Have it as a hobby, and you'll enjoy it when you're an old man. And it's true.
Right.
I'm not an old man yet, but right? Fun.
You have this very lovely and cheerful vibe anyone would cherish.
The person who is thinking about becoming a yogist, don't look for quick wins. I mean, there will be wins. You'll notice them. The gain is on the long run. I started when I was 19. I'm 71 now. I'll tell you, it pays off. It's worth it. It is wonderful. And it's a journey and a journey of joy and a discovery. And I hope, like you discover when you grab hold of the tail of yoga, the tiger's tail, the yoga's tiger's tail, you won't let go. You won't want to let go. Because now your life has meaning. Now it's like, oh, okay, all right, okay. Now, I see this. Become like a Taoist, if you like. We're all on the way. Are you enjoying it?
also there's something I would want to say to the listeners about practicing asanas and pranayams, that go back to the roots and look and acknowledge what the history and the it has for you, and probably you'll find something very important and very small things that could make big difference to your life.
Absolutely. Absolutely, I am. Absolutely. Underline what you just said.
So thank you so much, sir. It was a
You
lovely
bet.
experience talking to you. And
Me too.
the vibe was really, I don't think I'll any time forget this conversation I had with you.
You're very kind. You're very kind. And I hope your listeners and your viewers enjoyed and can use what it is that I've offered them.
Definitely, sir.